Jimmy B.
What's going
Jimmy.
on?
Hey man, so obviously, we talked about Train My Trainer just a little bit in passing, but obviously, you know what I'm trying to do with my time in the industry. So I figured showing people that are coming into the health and fitness industry as it's continuously getting bigger, the market's getting bigger, especially with all the changes going on now with the GLPs and everything else, right? And people are committing more to themselves, right? To be that counterbalance based on the type of food and everything else we have in this world today. So
Mhm.
really, I want to be able to give a community to where people can see, hey, how other trainers have done it in whichever fashion. So whether you're an in-person trainer, whether you're a hybrid, whether you're online, right? Whether you do group, whatever it may be, to say, hey, okay, my road is this, and that's okay. I can still be successful, but to hear other people's stories, right? Uh, my time in the industry for 13 years has been, in the brick and mortar facilities and cultivating people to amplify their gift. But I think the stories of others who have gone a different journey is going to be more impactful, right? So, you know, really for you, I want to talk about, like, I see your origins, how you got started, what kind of led to, where you're at today. Of course, we have, a history being neighbors growing up and all of that,
Yep.
right? So that makes the story even cooler. And just be able to have that network that was never in the brick and mortar facilities that I've always worked in. So yeah, take it from there.
I feel that. That resonates with me. So yeah, we've been neighbors basically for 25 years. Moved in at 2 years old, so you've
Yeah.
known me since I was real young. Um, I've been into, physiques and training and just bodybuilding, it's always resonated and interested me at a very young age, 5, 6 years old. Started, at the age of 6 doing, push-ups, sit-ups, got a light pair of dumbbells. And that slowly, gradually progressed as I aged, started incorporating pull-ups and running and different types of activities. And then at around the age of, 10, 11 years old, started, wanting to research more. And, that's when YouTube was really hitting the scene.
Yeah.
I started coming across all the bodybuilders from the 2000s era, started studying them. I was real small as a kid, you remember, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to get bigger. So I bought a weight set at home. I started, progressing. I started learning more, and then I know you remember the Fitness 19 days
Yep.
around the corner from our house. There was a gym there. I had signed up there. That was my first gym membership at 12 years old. You were also a member there, much older than me.
Yep.
Um, and that's really where I started learning everything, just, trial and error. Started learning how to, weight lift properly. Started learning about nutrition more at the age around 14, 15, where I started getting into that. Um, and basically, as the years went by, the journey always changed and it pretty much led me to where I am now. So after, the age of 12, 13, 14, being in the gym, it translated to high school football where we started training there, learned a lot of mental strength and discipline from, it was Coach Moran at the time. I don't know if he was your
Yep. I
coach
remember.
too. So
Last year I was in there. Yep.
yeah, he engraved a lot of mental discipline into me at a young age. Um, Put us through some really rough workouts. So that was like the start of everything. I thank him a lot for everything he put us through those years. It really it engraved a lot of mental discipline into me. And then, after high school, when football was over, there was, nothing to pursue at that point. So I was kind of lost, spinning my wheels. That's where I started, trying to train as a hybrid, trying to find my way into like the CrossFit realm and the hybrid training. And then that soon, seeing the men's physique era come, onto the scene on Instagram, and it spiked an interest in me. So from there, I always had good genetics, thought I had potential. So I went ahead
Yeah.
and hired a coach. Went on a 5 month diet, completely morphed, did my first contest. It went well at the age of 19. Realized I had potential in the sport. So I went all in with that, worked with quite a few coaches. I know I upgraded from that coach to another coach, started taking it real serious. This was all throughout college, basically just eat, train, study, and sleep. That's what I was doing for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
and then just the obsession to become better as, an undersized kid with, good genetics, but not the genetics to get huge real easily. Uh, it spiked, pretty much put me down a rabbit hole of just constant research when I was supposed to be studying at the time. I'd always find myself just researching bodybuilding, fitness, nutrition. And then, from there, people started asking me questions, people in the community, friends, people at the gym. And then that started as me, coaching a couple of friends for free, wanting to start, into the online coaching game. That was rough at first, as coaching people for free doesn't really do much for you at first. A lot of them won't listen, but
Right.
luckily I had a few people who were able to give me good testimonies. I posted those, people started spiking more interest. I started charging a low rate. That's where my clientele kind of started to grow back in like 2017, 2018. Coaching a few friends just in the area at a very low rate. And then, as the testimonies started coming, I was able to post more. And then as I started posting my own journey and more of what I was learning, that's really where everything started to blossom. People started to see that, and this was before, the chat GPT era, the day where,
Yeah.
info is so easily accessed now. Everybody's a fitness coach now. Back when I started, there were no fitness coaches. There was just a
Yep.
handful. So the market was open. I took advantage at the time. I built a good name for myself at the time. I took real good care of my clients, knowing that this was gonna, pay dividends down the line. So basically, started putting people on stage, started experiencing, started failing, had to learn the hard way in a lot of cases. Built more experience as my client base started to expand. And then from there, after school, coaching became kind of full time at that point, to the point where I was able to move across the country to California to pursue my bodybuilding dream.
Oh
Um,
wow.
oh,
Okay.
yeah, so I went there 2023, got an opportunity to stay with my friend who had a house. I was paying him rent for a room. He's also a bodybuilder. He's my age. He's also a coach. So we met just through social media back in like 2021. By 2023, we were doing it together,
That's
living
amazing.
living the Cali bodybuilder lifestyle for a year. So I fulfilled my, dream of that, but it got cut short as in 2021 I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, autoimmune condition, just from, constantly pushing myself, whether it was in school and my studies, studying for my coaching, taking on, you know, going from 0 to 50 clients in 1 month at the time. While I was in a colitis flare, not knowing what was going on. I didn't know what colitis was at the time. I just knew things were happening. I was flaring up. So I was starting to, having to rely on a lot of stimulants to keep myself going, which made the issues worse.
Of
From there,
course.
I ended up hiring another coach who also had UC. So I figured maybe, we'll go this route, see if he can get me corrected. At the time, he got me into remission. His name is Phil Viz,
Okay.
well-known coach in the industry. So he's, hiring him really upgraded my knowledge. He taught me a lot. I put on a lot of size with him. I did really well. Did a show. We were supposed to do a national show. I ended up getting food poisoning and pulling out, and that's when I moved to California to,
Okay.
focus my year basically on bodybuilding. Coming into that year when I moved to Cali, I knew that this was going to be my last show. I wanted to take one shot at a national show. I didn't want to keep pushing my body with the autoimmune condition, but I knew I wanted to at least take one shot at that nationals, just because, I was training so hard for years on end. Just wanted to take that shot at it. We did it. It went great. As well as it could go, being, with the condition. I ended up in the first call out in a really, really stacked class. I placed sixth. Four out of the six guys are now pros. 18 months
That was
later,
beautiful.
I was the youngest guy in the class. I was in a colitis flare that week, high stress, so I wasn't even at 100%, but I'm happy with how it went, how the experience went.
You checked
And
the
then
ego a little bit.
yeah, but it definitely it was worth it. I knew it was going to be my last show. So I went out with a bang, and then I pretty much bodybuilding stopped, and I was lost. Didn't know where to go from there. Still in California. I was planning to stay another year. Pops opened a business. He didn't know how to run it. So I came back overnight, had to help him get it on its feet. That's what 2024 was dedicated to, was getting it onto its feet. The stress of, doing something else, I had to pull back from coaching that year. I was still
Okay.
coaching. I still had my active roster. It was definitely downsized at that point. It was mainly bodybuilders at the time.
Yeah.
Had a really good year putting people on stage. It wasn't a great year when it came to how many clients I was taking on and, at a business standpoint. But from a marketing standpoint, from a, competition standpoint, it was my best year yet. And then from there, the stress caught up, the colitis got worse, got into a deeper flare, kind of went down a rabbit hole. Uh, Lowest point of my life, I would say, was between the times of November up until about February,
Wow.
where you know I started noticing with my main clients that a lot of them were running into dysfunction now after working with them for a few years in the bodybuilding realm. I was, finding some clients pre-diabetic, some clients with high
Oh,
inflammatory markers, things that were kind of stumping me. So I decided to start investing my money into mentorships. So
okay.
at the time, I came across, well, I've always known of this coach, a functional health coach with the name of Jason Theobald. He's very well known in our industry.
Yeah.
I got with his mentorship, Scooby U, it's called. I highly, highly recommend this for people who are trying to learn more about functional health, hormones, blood work, things of that nature. I immediately started working all the cases. Luckily, I was able to solve them all. So I thank his mentorship for that. And then I decided, with my colitis and everything, I needed a new brand. I needed to expand on this. There's way too many bodybuilding coaches, especially being out of the game for a year. So many people and all the mentorships around,
Yeah.
so many people became coaches overnight at a lower rate. And there's just so many more options now for people to expand and work with other people. So at that point, I figured with the colitis being so bad, I'm going to work with this guy. I'm going to invest my money into him. Um, so I hired him, figured, not knowing where I was going to go marketing wise, not knowing what my niche was at this point, knowing the bodybuilding was always there, just word of mouth. So I
Mouth
didn't really,
referrals.
yeah, I didn't really have to market that, but I know that bodybuilding is only going to take you so far in this, business. So I really started enjoying fixing people's dysfunctions, fixing people's blood work, fixing, issues on the inside, which was causing, stalls in fat loss, stalls in, muscle gain, people, not performing at their highest, regular everyday people, people with high performing jobs like doctors, lawyers, things of that nature. So started, marketing my own journey, working with Jason. We're in remission now. He has pushed me to a different point mentally, physically, I would say too, even though we're not training as hard, it's just a completely new thing that I'm not used to.
A big shift.
Um, yeah, big shift. It's paid off so far because it's got me out of my comfort zone. I'm, doing something different now that I can show on my social media and it's resonating with a lot of people. It ties into, regular everyday lifestyle people. It ties into the bodybuilders and it ties into people who are dealing with real dysfunction, who are actual functional health, cases.
Yeah.
So that's basically where we're at now. I'm on this healing journey and I'm pretty much just marketing myself right now. And it's, so far I would say it's paying off. Things are, my business model is really expanding. My client base is really expanding, and I've been enjoying working with different types of people.
Well, I'd say you kind of touched on like what the businesses looked like in the first couple of years. And would you say for yourself? I mean, obviously, I followed your story along the years. Big community, right? And especially in the industry of bodybuilding, I like a lot of people don't know this, but in the 2012, 2013, 2014, I used to work with a lot of those type of clientele. But like you talked about, it can be a lot of burn and turn, especially when people are not following the programs to understand. It's a consistency game, and so now going back to my original touch point, the talk about the GLPs and the certain benchmarkers and be able to diagnose people based on certain markers of what their body is saying, right? But we've just never looked at it. I think that's huge. And based on what you've put out there, because you've put out little teasers, you kind of shown your journey a little bit so far. Um, what's been the consistent theme of the people that you have connected with that are dealing with certain type of things like that?
So I would say people just buying in to the process that I have laid out. A lot of people will hire me with these dysfunctions, not able to take, burn that weight off, not able to build muscle, feeling, not like themselves, especially a lot of the clients that I've worked with 4 or 5 years ago coming back and their body's just not functioning the same at an older age. The biggest thing is just getting people to buy into what I'm putting out. So it doesn't, look too fancy on paper when I'm telling somebody to wake up in the morning and get to some cold exposure, then get sunlight in their eyes and do things of that nature. They
Yeah.
want something else. But
Yeah.
then when they actually buy in and they see the markers on their blood panels completely turn around, people going into pre-kidney failure, people, with extremely high elevated A1C, liver enzymes, blood glucose, things of that nature, high inflammatory markers, and then getting those blood reports back and seeing the dysfunction disappear and their body start clicking again, being able to take that and, put it on my Instagram, and then it allows people to get that clarity and insight of, okay, maybe he's going somewhere with this. There's still a lot of people on the fence, a lot of people who are, been following me for years and now they're interested in coaching, but they see the business model that I've been taking, and I feel like it's scaring some people away, which is okay at the end of the day. At the end of the day, if somebody's not going to or is going to buy into my coaching and they're not going to follow the program the right way, ultimately, I don't want those types of clients because they're
Yeah.
going to, at the end of the day, like you said, referrals, and my clients are going to market me. So having to really just get people to buy in is the biggest turnaround for me currently.
Jimmy, for your process of bringing on a new client, right? If you talk about when you first started and you mentioned, hey, bringing in people, establishing those testimonials, getting a baseline, right? Then obviously as it elevated and you start charging a little more of a premium versus what you were, right? And then steering away from purely the bodybuilding industry type individuals to now people maybe who have different ailments that you need to address, right? What is the intake process like, and what do you attest to the investment you've done in yourself, right, with the people you've worked with? See, and the reason I ask this, in my time working with fitness professionals, a lot of them come out and they get certified and they get the education, but there's no application, right? And what I mean by that is say, hey, you have the knowledge, but how do you convey a message to the person? I mean, like, okay, hey, you may look good, you may know how to work out, but how can we translate the information to the other person to where they're like, yeah, you know what, I want to do that. So what's been kind of been your process?
Yeah, so when I started this a few months ago, it all started with fixing the dysfunctions of the current clients I had. Um, and then being able to, you know, post these differences in their blood reports and such. And then just me myself hiring a coach and experiencing what he was teaching in his programs or in his
Yeah,
mentorships has been paying dividends because now I'm able to experience what he's teaching, and I can't, and it's not just like I'm putting it on a paper and I have never done it now. So I can understand what the client is going through. I can, give them a little bit more insight, a little bit more clarity on what to expect, on
yeah,
how to go about things. Now, when a client comes to me, whether their goals are just fat loss, muscle gain, just feeling overall better, a lot of times they don't know if there's a dysfunction going on. They can't even read their own bodies. So what I'll do is when they apply, I'll always reach out. I'll, initially I'll just try to build some rapport with them. I'm trying to get their side of everything, what their struggle points are, um, what they have been doing, what's been working, what's not been working. Now, if I feel like a client isn't, if it's a beginner, somebody who hasn't been in the gym, somebody who's never dieted before, I'll let them know if this is something that we're going to have to work on. My coaching programs may not be for them. That's where I may have to recommend them somewhere else. That's rarely ever the case. I feel like I've been attracting the right types of people. It's just like I said, a process of getting them to buy in. So I'll have them fill out my base questionnaire, and then I'll have them fill out a couple other intakes if I feel like they are, running into some dysfunction. A digestive questionnaire, as everything does start in the gut. So I like to eliminate that first, that possibility. And then just really getting them, once they're onboarded, getting them to pull their blood work. They get that blood work. And then me being able to, with these tests, I'm not guessing. So I always say, tests, don't guess. So once I get these tests back, I can read it out. I can give them more insight, more clarity. Best case scenario, there's no dysfunction going on. Worst case scenario, there's a lot of dysfunction going on. That's where I have to, you know, get on a call with the client and, let them understand that this isn't not like a 12-week crazy transformation that they're about to enter. It's going to be more of a mind, body, spirit thing. They're going to have to do some inner work. They're going to have to fix these dysfunctions, get their internals functioning before
Yeah.
externally they can get to where they want to go. So that's been the biggest, change right now is just how I'm onboarding them. Um, and then just giving them that insight and clarity before they actually pull the trigger on working with me on what they're going to expect.
If you had to say, based on, we all work with in the industry with our other peers, especially within the networking community that we know. And would you say the way you go on the intake and having these clients come in with the test is probably something that separates you from others who are just, trying to, cast a big net and catch, a bunch of little tunas?
It's a huge difference, yes, in a couple of different aspects. For one, a lot of people who are into the fitness coaching realm, it's a lot of macro training volume talk, which is great. Everybody has to have that base knowledge. Everybody has to have that experience to be able to get into this game. Now, the issue is once they start running into the dysfunctions and people start going around marketing for these coaches, and people are asking them, "How is your journey going? How are things going?" And they're not giving a good testimony. Um, that's a big difference maker for people. That's where, investing into your own knowledge and education will go a long way because from what I notice, it could just be the energy I'm putting out, which is what's coming back. But from what I noticed over the past almost decade of working with people is 3 or 4 clients out of 10 are going to have some type of dysfunction that's going to hinder their progress.
Yeah.
So when people see, or they hear that I want to see their blood work, I want to see their tests, I want to make sure that we're covering every aspect from the mental to the physical to their, spiritual, every aspect of it. I think it resonates with a lot of people. I think they appreciate it. It gives them what they paid for. It's more than just moving macros around, moving their training volume around, which is important and it's still a part of everything. But that's a really big difference maker is just them knowing that their health comes first to me and it's not just about posting a quick transformation.
Yeah. And would you say, and without obviously discussing, from a standpoint of what you charge people, right, as far as the investment standpoint, what has been the difference as far as in the early days of you doing this versus now and charging what you charge, right, and dealing with the price objections? I would always tell trainers that, hey, whether it's $5 or it's 5,000, my presentation is the same because I'm that bought in, right? So to me, it should be delivered in a standpoint where it's normal, right? Because at the end of the day, you are investing in yourself. And the difference is it's not something tangible where we're going to buy a car, we're getting the keys to something shiny, right? So it is the buy-in that you mentioned, but what have you found has been kind of your growth in dealing with those potential clients who are like, uh, right, because at every level you're gonna have it, right? Like when people would hear when I would only take on a few clients to train and know what I charge, like when it was a per session, right, and I do 2 3 month commitments, their minds would get blown. But I say, hey, there's a reason for it. I know what I'm gonna deliver, and the people that worked with me know what I'm gonna deliver, right?
hmm
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
So back in the day when I charged less, I had a lot more onboards, but a lot more people who were just ghosting after they seen the plan. There was a lot of interest and a lot of buy-ins because the price wasn't so high. Now when people come to me, they see my price. Now, half the time they're bought right in just because they came from another client who gave them all the ins and outs of what I'm providing, and
Yeah,
immediately they're buying in. Now, when they don't understand it, I always try to get them on a call so that we can talk things over, what I provide, what I offer. Now, what a lot of people are expecting is, a once a week check-in, minimal communication, macro training volume. They're not expecting to pay much for that. It's
yeah,
not a complete transformation. And a lot of times it can go great for somebody, especially a younger individual who's completely healthy in all ways, great genetics. That type of coaching is great still. Now, with what I provide, I have to explain to the, potential client, hey, this is, yes, you're investing into yourself, but this is also going to reflect in all the other areas of your life. Gonna, you're going to fix yourself, you're going to fix your mind, you're going to start establishing new habits, and this is all going to, reflect into your business life. You're going to start making more money, you're going to start thinking more clear, you're going to start leading better. Um, whether it's in their relationships, their work life, their day-to-day life, whether they're dealing with anxiety, stress, them
No.
investing into themselves ultimately is either, not investing into themselves now is either going to cost them later in these ways, or it's going to pay dividends because they did invest in themselves and they decided to bet on themselves and go all in. Besides that, I just try to explain to them that I'm there for them through this whole process. It's not just a macro training volume approach where any type of dysfunction, any type of issue that comes their way, I'm here to work through it with them. I'm here to give them insight. I'm here to educate them through the process, not just tell them what to do and not being able to explain it to them. So I always want them to leave better than when they came, not just externally, internally and mentally. So I think just getting them to notice that is the biggest key factor.
Yeah, so you say it's probably, just the commitment you have to the individual, right? If they're committed to you, you're committed to them. That's another point to say, hey, the energy you pour in can potentially be reciprocal from your clients if done correctly, right? Because people can feel intention. You know,
Mhm.
uh, what's been the biggest shift for you that's helped you, as an entrepreneur in this sense, especially in this realm, as more and more people enter the industry and people are trying to poke and grab wherever they can, help you make consistent money, help you say, hey, I know what I'm going to do. I know who I'm going to deliver for. And then also kind of leave that channel open to where you're getting the referrals.
Okay, so I think being, remaining open-minded, remaining curious has been a big thing for me, constantly learning and evolving, uh, humbling myself and noticing that I don't know it all, even if I know more than, let's say, 95% of coaches out there. I still have to, remain humble in that sense and try to seek knowledge through different mentors, different resources and such. And then really just walking the walk, not just, telling somebody to do something, broadcasting, a certain way of living, but not living it. I notice, just putting that energy in, working on myself is reciprocating and people are feeling that energy and they see what I'm doing, they appreciate what I'm doing, they know it's not a scam that way, and it's drawing more attention, more eyes my way. Um, and then again, just trying to learn and do something with that knowledge, trying to educate, trying to apply it to clients where it fits and, things like of that nature.
What was the mental switch for you, right? So, you had a vision, you had a dream, obviously when it was in the bodybuilding world, right? And then as things unraveled per se, right, from the body wise, how that and the mental battle, is always between you and you. But you mentioned it earlier, like being at a low point, right? And what was that mental switch for you to say, okay, hey, you know what? I'm gonna make the commitment to myself and just allow me to do something for others in a different way. But a lot of times, humans are wired for negative self-talk, right? So to be able to like, okay, that's the first hill you got to run is getting over that negative self-talk, and then be able to say, okay, hey, now I'm gonna make it vocal and say, hey, I'm gonna help people, right? So kind of tell me about that.
So when a few months ago when I decided to make that shift, I have never been much of a poster on social media. I've posted just enough. Everything was built off of word of mouth, besides in the, real beginning back in 2021 when I went on a posting spree. Um, as the business model changed, as the market became more saturated, as the algorithm started changing, I know uh find something that was more unique to me as an individual that reflected who I was. Uh Not living with, like, I felt like I was living with a mask on for the past, few years, kind of ego driven as a bodybuilder. Um and just trying to take off that mask and live more in my flesh, be more comfortable with who I actually am from nature. And just basically all the trials and tribulations I had to go through had to, wake me up and allow me to realize that, hey, just because you've had the clients before doesn't mean you're always going to hold them, doesn't mean that things aren't going to change.
Yep.
Always just being open minded to evolving and posting, a new way of, how I go about my coaching, and just not being afraid to, care what anyone thinks, just getting out there, posting my mind, speaking my mind, trying to get as much info out there on, on my page as possible, and just trying to help, even if it's just one person, not letting the algorithm get to my head.
Yep.
Just because I know that whether there's 100 people viewing or 1 million people viewing, what matters is impact.
Yep.
I'd rather have impact towards 100 people than zero impact towards 1 million people. So that's been the, biggest game changer, is just recognizing that and just proceeding forward with everything without looking back.
And I applaud you for that because I tell when when it's the scariest to jump, that's when you're supposed to jump, right?
Hmm.
So being positioned now where you are, obviously going through your journey, right? The last few years and kind of the stories that you can tell and the people you've worked with, the people you've met. What would you tell your younger self starting out? And I asked this question because I remember coming in the industry and being very curious. And my mentor was somebody who at that point was already 20 years in the fitness industry, had grand opened so many facilities for big name companies, record setting months in sales. And um, my younger self was always curious, curious, curious. And same thing like you talked about, there was a point where I felt untouchable, right? But what it was is I didn't have competition, right? I didn't have like from a something that was measurable from a metric standpoint. I didn't have anybody who was competing with me until I ran into some competition, and then that helped me elevate my game because I had to humble myself and say, "Hey, go back to being that young, curious guy that wants to learn and ask the questions." So, what would you tell your younger self?
To remain curious.
Yeah.
Curiosity is the best, greatest thing in the world. Whenever, somebody asks me how I got to where I got, it's just remaining curious. I notice the more curious I am, the more open-minded I am, the more willing I am to learn and adapt, figure out new things, fall on my face and pick myself back up, and then adjust where I need to adjust so that, things don't happen that way again. And then also recognizing that I'm going to fall on my face again in another way. So just being prepared for that and knowing that it's not going to be a perfect road. Learn from your mistakes, pick back up, and just keep going and remain curious.
Yep, that's beautiful. So for you right now, obviously we know the shift you made with the individuals you're working with, right? You talked about the investments you made in yourself, right? And I assume based on being curious and what you've done, that's something you're probably going to continue doing, right? As you evolve, right? That's where you level up and find that. That's the basis of train my trainers. Say, hey, saying it's okay, right? We can put our egos aside coming in and say, hey, like being that trusted person that's gonna help change people, but we need that guidance too, right? So what are you focused on in the next 6 months to the next year? What is that journey gonna look like?
Well, the journey is always going to evolve, just as, my personal journey will evolve. So the next 6 months is really expanding on what I'm already doing right now, just learning more through the clients that I'm onboarding, more dysfunction cases, continuing my mentorship with Jason, expanding there, really, continuing to market myself, market my journey. Then I already know there's going to be a next step. The next step is going to be, fixing my body from the outside. Now,
Yeah.
not visually, but all the different injuries that I've sustained from bodybuilding. I got two slipped ribs in my back. I don't
Oh
ever
wow.
speak about. Nobody knows about. I don't even train really anymore. I train 1 to 3 times a week, very lightly, just to maintain muscle. um those ribs slip out of place all the time doing regular things, and then I'm crippled for a few days. So the next thing is going to be uh taking care of that with an ortho, which I don't really know what the steps are yet. I'm still gonna, I'm going into that with no expectations, pretty much blindfolded, and then, learning more about that stuff, and then being able to take that on into another chapter, and with what I'm already doing, and
Yeah.
being able to expand my clientele even further at that point, which I know I'm gonna have, I'm gonna have to humble myself when it comes to, injuries because it's not my specialty, it's not my realm yet. Um, but really just learning more about how to overcome these setbacks, because I already have a feeling I'm gonna have to need a procedure on this, and I'll probably end up working with a coach who specializes in post-surgery recovery, and then I'll be able to learn more about that. Hopefully, work with people who are dealing with different types of injuries as well.
Uh,
Just always trying to expand down the line based on what I'm doing currently and what I'm experiencing with my clients.
I think that's a great way to continue mirroring the clients in a way that's going to be beneficial. So what advice would you give to trainers who are trying to build a business, not just get clients, right? So, somebody who's coming into the industry now and wants to get started, or maybe somebody who's been in the industry and then, has fallen flat on their face, or been mediocre. What's a piece of advice you'd give them?
Couple pieces of advice. Number one, they have to practice what they preach. People can sense when the energy is fake or off. People know, if there's a coach uh marketing their coaching and they're talking about how you got to do ABC, but they're not doing ABC, people can sense that. And then also educating themselves, humbling themselves, seeking out mentorships, investing into their education, and then actually applying that education, because
Yeah.
education without application is worthless. So just, pretty much like you said, when it feels afraid to jump in, jump in. So once they got that education going, to jump in. Um, and then a big thing is not overcharging at first. A lot of people will overcharge at first. They got to build some trust. They got to build some testimonies. They got to be able to go out of their way and provide excellence towards their clients, even if they're at a low rate. Being able to take care of these clients as if they're paying two, three times the rate you're charging them at first, just to,
Yeah.
get yourself on the scene. But I also don't recommend somebody does that if they don't have any type of experience, if they're not walking the walk, if they don't have the knowledge. I think that's the first step to everything.
Yeah, no, I absolutely believe that. Right. This is where a lot of times, and this is a message for all trainers. Okay. When you're on that fitness floor, okay, instead of saying, hey, can I give you a free session? Establish your presence, right? If people feel comfortable around you and they want to talk to you, it'd be like me walking up to Jimmy after we've established a relationship and say, hey, Jimmy, can I give you an hour of my time? Okay. And then now we can apply it to what Jimmy wants to do. And this, even if Jimmy's not a committed paying client, the visual of what you're going to give to the public, right? Especially when somebody's aesthetically looking a certain way or not looking a certain way. Either way, curiosity is going to drive whether that person that you think looks good in the facility or is working on themselves, like, man, this person's committing to themselves. Wow, maybe I need to do that, or vice versa. So you nailed it. Jimmy, what I'm gonna give a little, we're gonna stir the pot a little bit. Okay. What's one belief in the fitness, business industry that you totally disagree with, or it's kind of like, is there anything that kind of stands out to you?
Calories in, calories out. When people
Oh, we're
say
gonna stir the
calories in,
pot.
calories
All you
out.
macro trainers.
Yeah, that I mean, listen, the law of thermodynamics is a law of thermodynamics. Do calories in, calories out matter? Sure. But if you're taking in 2,000 calories of pure olive oil versus lean grass-fed steak, there's going to be a difference. There's going to
Absolutely.
be a difference in your hormone balance, which macronutrients are coming in, and the way that the body just responds to that. So a lot of, if it fits your macros, which I'm not against. Listen, some people can't follow a diet yet, and that's a great business model. But I wouldn't actually say it's a great business model. It's a good business model, but the thing is it has holes.
Yeah, it's meant
Like I
meant to be a
said,
simple framework. Yep.
yeah. So things like that you're going to run into more dysfunctions, and you are going to gain good testimonials. So um, I don't like when somebody says you just need to be in a calorie deficit, or you just need to burn more calories than you're intaking, because most of the times they're speaking to probably a middle-aged mom who's dealing with hormone imbalance, or somebody who has a very high stress life, managing different types of businesses.
Yep.
Everyone has their own circumstances, and what works for person A is not going to work for person B all the time. So that's the number one thing I would say is just hearing so much calories in, calories out.
Yeah, no, it's more to it, right? It's like, hey, like you talked about the dysfunctions, right? So there's gut health, stress, sleep, all these recovery, all the above, right? To be optimal. And that's where hopefully with the access to information, people are going to be more receptive to it in the near future versus thinking it's just, simple framework. For those that need just that simple structure and it can be beneficial for them, great, right? But majority of the country is in an imbalance. That's just the reality. So you have to approach it in a different sense. And yeah, Jimmy, I mean, hey, I appreciate everything we talked about. If there's anything you want to add to it, fire away. Um, this is, you're the first episode of the series for Train My
Pleased
Trainer.
to hear that.
Yeah, so we're gonna make this into I see Instagram, YouTube, all the above. I'm gonna tag you up. The coaches that you mentioned, they gave shout out to, send me their information. I'll tag them too, and just spread the love, right? Because I think the community, instead of being everybody fighting for the business, needs to expand in the standpoint of being compatible with each other, working
Mm-hmm.
together. There's enough business to go around. That's just the
Mm-hmm.
reality of it. And I always talked about it's about your lifestyle, right? If it applies, it fits. If it doesn't, you move on, right? Meaning, so those that you might work with are going to be completely different than Johnny Bravo down the street who he's working or she's working with, right? And that's okay. But who's to say, like you mentioned earlier, the phases of people's lives and where they need to be or what they need, right? And this is where one of my key factors in the train my trainer method is the personality, right? Establishing accountability, establishing education. Personality matters. If I'm seeing Jimmy 2 or 3 times a week, I gotta make sure I enjoy that time. That's part of it.
Right.
That's part of it. So yeah, let's spread the love. Let's keep changing people's lives. Anything you want to add, you let me know. But then we'll go from there.
Yeah, basically just, having maintaining for everybody an abundant mindset. There is no
Yeah.
competition. There's 8 billion people in this world. When I came into this world, there was only 4 billion. So it's like there's enough to go around for everybody.
Yeah.
Working together is the best thing we can do. Whatever's meant to land in your lap will land, just depending on the energy you put out. Every client has their own best coach.
Yep.
That's the way I like to put it, even if there's better coaches than other ones. Some people aren't a good fit. So yeah, just working together, remaining positive in that sense, and not, trying to stay away from all the toxicity that floats around in the industry, which
Absolutely.
has, got me away a little bit from the bodybuilding industry as a whole.
That's why I stepped out of that community. Just wasn't for me, man. It's and that's like you said, pouring it back in, being that positive light, and the investment in oneself in whatever way, shape, or form is going to continue. It's going to continue growing. Like you said, 8 billion people and the access to information. So it's energy, right? That's what we got to continue pouring in. So let's do that. And then when you're ready, we'll schedule a follow up, Jimmy. We'll see where you're at in the
Absolutely,
journey.
man. It was a pleasure so far.
Thank
Excited
you,
to see
man.
where this goes. Excited to see
Yeah.
where your channel goes too.
Thank you. Keep tabs, baby.
Absolutely, man. It was nice talking. We'll get back on here soon.
Thank you, Jimmy. Bye bye.
All right, brother.